Hundreds of Bibles burned outside of a church, and OnlyFans star turns us a revival breaking out on yet another college campus. Welcome to Higher Ground. I'm Billy Hallowell, and on today's roundtable, I'm joined by the Washington Times' Mark Kellner and Jesse Jackson of Church Leaders. So we have quite a number of stories here to get into, and honestly, Jesse, I want to start with you because this story caught my eye. You and I texted a bit about it, but this is an former OnlyFans model named Nala Ray. Take us through her story.
Yeah, it was really interesting. To be honest, like we kind of held off on the story a little bit as it was developing. One of the reasons being is because she came out. She said, "Hey, um, I've rededicated my life to Christ. I just got baptized." Nala, was a pastor's kid. She grew up in a very conservative household. Her testimony is kind of all over social media, on many different social media platforms. I'm not sure. I think TikTok is maybe one of the main ones that she uses, but you can hear her testimony all over the place. I linked a few of them within my article here, and it was interesting to hear. She grew up in a very conservative uh, household. Is kind of what she shared. Wasn't a whole lot. Her pastored a very small church. Her dad did, but the weird thing, or the reason why we held off on it, is because she still had her OnlyFans like page activated, and we're like, that's strange. And obviously, none of us at Church Leaders is on OnlyFans, but I guess one of the female writers, when we were investigating it, our female writers, she went on there and she was looking, and she's like, "There's still a video on there," and not knowing what the video was, and we hadn't heard, we hadn't seen testimony of her talking about it yet. Well, come to find out that video she had to keep. She's kept it on there, and she's waiting for her tax stuff to come back, um, which is a whole, I'm sure people have comments about that. But she deleted all her videos but one, and the one video that's on there is some Christian video. So
Oh,
very
wow.
interesting that she kept that on there. But no, I mean, her story's amazing. And as we've seen, I know, not to kind of promote a little bit of your book there, Billy, but the one that you just released with Joshua Broome, he's got a similar story in that, and it's interesting to hear these people that have been, in an industry, that has their clutches on them, and then God, saves them, and they come out of that, and their testimony is so strong. So that's kind of what you get with Ray's story here. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And Mark, I don't know. I'd love to get your take on this too, because you have this 23-year-old, beautiful girl who had this upbringing, this Christian upbringing. I can't imagine the pain the family, just as like writers and journalists, covering these stories. I always think about, man, that father who was a pastor. This must have been really rough for him knowing that this was going on. And then she has this incredible conversion. One of the things, Mark, a lot of people will say, when it comes to these kinds of stories, oh, restrictive childhoods are bad. And you'll hear this kind of commentary, especially now with people who are former evangelicals, and they'll sort of pinpoint all the bad things the Christian parents do, and they'll blame the parents for a kid maybe turning in this way to something like this in the first place. What's your take on that? Because I know you've covered some of that sort of cultural commentary.
Well, first of all, it's very difficult to see into anybody's mind and heart. And I wouldn't presume to guess that, because the parents did this, an adult child ends up doing, X, Y, or Z in it. And I also, quite frankly, personally, I feel for the family involved
Mhm.
because who wants this advertised all over the place.
Hmm.
But I wonder if a greater lesson here is that Ms. Ray has finally discovered something uh, that many of us have, and that is that however enticing or appealing a certain line of behavior is, it ultimately doesn't satisfy.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
And who was it? Blaise Pascal, I think, the philosopher, who said there is a God-shaped void in each of us, and only He can fill it. I'm paraphrasing, but it's a widely expressed sentiment. And my surmise is that this young lady was trying to fill a void, and she was
Hmm.
trying to do it with various experiences and so forth, and she may have made a lot of money off of it, but the void was not filled, and she finally discovered that the way back is to embrace what God wants for her, which is the best way of life.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Something that was really interesting too, just real quick, that I found in there that I didn't share was, when she was doing, and this, again, I don't know much about this industry at all, other than just writing a story. But she made lots of money. She was a millionaire. I don't know if that's common in the OnlyFans world. I know that through stories like Joshua Broom and explains like that, they can make lots of money doing uh, in this industry. But she
Which is
was
hard to walk
saying
away from. It's hard
exactly,
to walk away
exactly.
from, right? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And but what was interesting in that, obviously, her making all that money, she has all that money. She was saying, things in her life were good. Kind of different from Joshua's story towards the end of his story. But she was just saying, it was her boyfriend, her now boyfriend, that led her back to Christ, showed her God, and was praying for her. She says the devil has attacked her. She has never been under so much. I'll use this word. I don't think she used it. Kind of persecution, just constant torment from the devil since leaving the industry. Before, she's like, no, everything seemed like it was fine. Now, and it's just like, and she's all about like, God's got me. This is all for His glory. So to go into that testimony more is just it's powerful.
That is, and this idea that things are going to be easy for people, when they become Christians, it's the
Yeah,
exact opposite, for
yeah,
her on that front. And Mark, I love what you were saying before too, because it is, I kind of set you up, and I love the response you gave because, it's really easy to judge a family or to judge people or to say, oh, this happened because of this. And I often think back to that proverb, which obviously it's one of the famous ones, Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't
mm,
depart from it. And I often think about that, and I think, it doesn't say that the child's not going to go wayward or go crazy. It does say that when they're old, they won't depart from it. And I mean, again, we can prove text all day, but I think it's an interesting text when you see stories like this to consider that those values that somebody was raised with, they often come back to even when they go through something like this. And again, we don't know the ins and the outs of the story, but I love that, and I especially think it's important to highlight when somebody's making money and their life is good and they make a choice like that to walk away, there's a lot of courage in that on multiple fronts, right? So
yeah,
it's pretty powerful. But
yeah.
There is
well,
a
Mark,
lot of courage. Yeah.
I want to dive over into your story because this particular story is so bizarre on so many levels. It's this Greg Locke story, Global Vision Bible Church. Basically, lots of burning Bibles. Take us through what happened in this particular story on Easter morning.
Well, anyone who knows Greg Locke, and I can't say that I know Pastor Locke very well, but I've certainly observed his work, would say that he's on fire for Jesus. Um, that's one thing, but it's quite another thing to show up at your church. You see what I did there? It's another thing to show up at your church and see this trailer, this small trailer that's been packed with Bibles smoldering after the fire department put it out. Now, let me be clear. These were not, from his telling, these were not his Bibles. He didn't buy the trailer. He didn't buy the Bibles. He didn't put them there, and he didn't set them on fire. Somebody else did that, and the somebody else, so far unidentified, is on the church security video.
Mm.
Uh, what he tells me is that it was designed to upset people and deter them from going to church on Easter Sunday, and he said that didn't happen.
Hmm.
Mm.
Jesse,
Mm.
okay. I don't know how much you guys have before this happened followed the story, but have you guys seen and we did some stories at CBN on this. He was hosting all these burnings himself of Ouija boards, and
Oh
it
yeah.
started back in 2022, right? So what was your? Did you think about that, Jesse, when you saw this? Because that was my first thought. I was like, huh, this feels like a response to that almost.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, Greg. I've talked to Greg a lot. We have some mutual friends, and yeah, he's held two of those burnings, pretty large ones, where he burned a lot of like demonic, stuff or things that they called demonic, which was a lot of like CDs, books, Harry Potter stuff. I think they might have even included some Disney stuff into that too. Whatever Greg might have been preaching on at that time. So I'm sure, yeah, Greg has a lot of haters out there. Let's just say that.
No,
Yeah,
he
yeah. I
said
mean,
exactly that, by the way, that, the church does have its enemies and opponents,
Yeah.
and that they thought perhaps this would be some kind of stunt.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it made me wonder. Like, I thought, okay, this is either it's obviously a stunt and it's horrible. I mean, let's not forget, as we're sort of laughing, because I mean, I was laughing about just the elements of it because it was just so it's just so insane. But I mean, these are Bibles. It's really I actually want to pray for the person who went out there and did this, right? Because you've taken Bibles and you've set them on fire. It's actually a pretty horrific act, but part of me wondered, it's either a gag or somebody thinks they're being funny and it's obviously not, or is this some, Satanist group? I don't know. I mean, is this some group out there that was trying to make a real point? Like, hey, you're burning our stuff. Now we're going to burn yours. I don't know. But all I could think of was, man, I really cannot wait to find out who this was, to A, pray for them, and B, just figure the story out, because it is a strange, strange story. It really is.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it absolutely is. But it's drawn attention, I think, to the church and to Greg Locke. Now, on
Hmm.
April 23rd, he and Mario Signorelli are going to have this movie event, Miracles at the Movie. Mike
Mm.
Signorelli, I'm sorry,
Oh yeah.
are
Hmm.
going to have this movie event, Miracles at the Movie. And that is going to be in theaters one night all across the country and should be rather exciting.
Yeah.
That is, yeah, they've been putting these movies out. Both of them had their movies out separately, and then now they're doing it together. So that it should be interesting to see. I think it's bringing this topic of deliverance and evil out to the forefront. Of course, Greg Locke is a controversial figure, right? I mean, there's
Hmm.
people who love him, there's people who don't. There's a whole conversation that has happened there, but I did think it was interesting, and you brought this up, Mark, that he said, "Hey, we still did Easter services with no problem. We were still able to do it. They cleared the burning bowels out." And at the very least, it's bringing attention to not only, I think, some of the pressing in on faith that is happening in the country, but also the growth of faith and people celebrating even in the midst of difficult things. So, I don't know. I don't know where
Yeah.
it's going to go next, but I can't wait to see.
Well, something too, Mark. I don't know if I was looking through your article just to see, but I thought it was interesting too that uh, Greg wanted to hand out. He asked the authorities, because he was there. He
Yes.
wanted to hand out the burning pages. Obviously the burnt pages. Sorry, they weren't burning when he was going to hand them out. He wanted to pray for, like you say, the person that did it, and just be praying for the city or whoever. You don't, who knows if it was a single person that did it, or a group or whatever, like you kind of explained. But what was interesting too is that the authorities would not let him do it, and said that they had to bring in the FBI because they're actually investigating this as a hate crime. So
That's
which
right.
is also, a lot of times I think, at least things that I've covered in the Christian church, I think we pull for that a lot. Like, oh, why is this not investigated as a hate crime, when we see other things happen and they are? So it's interesting that this one, the authorities are taking the initiative to say this is a hate crime, and we're going to be looking into it to see if that's what the charges need to be. So,
You know
yeah.
what's
Well,
interesting, and I just wanted to bring this up about what you just said, because I reached out to the FBI on this, and they don't comment on whether or not they've
no.
opened investigations usually,
Right,
so they wouldn't
right.
confirm whether or not they had. And I thought, oh gosh, I know what I'm gonna get from them, and they forwarded me back to the local police. But I thought, why can't they confirm whether they're looking? It's just such a strange thing. Like, we can't confirm if we're investigating this or not.
Yeah.
Mark,
Well,
you were gonna say something.
I don't know the full protocol that the FBI does, but it's not uncommon for them to say we're not going to confirm an investigation or
Yes.
anything like that. However, If this investigation is unfolding as a hate crime investigation, I kind of see that as a positive thing
Yeah.
because generally, especially in the last 3 years, let's say, a lot of the investigations have been directed at Christians who were peacefully protesting various things. And it would be nice to see the FBI, I'm not going to say balance, but direct some attention to people attacking Christians, whether it's churches or pro-life clinics
Mm.
or other organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, equal punishment under the law. That's what. No, it's. I mean, you do you do want to see though. You want to see that, in all fairness, that people are being held accountable. I mean, if you're lighting 200 books, Bibles on fire, you're doing it outside of a church. That is a hate crime. I mean,
Yeah.
it should be treated as such. And so we'll see where it goes next. Maybe we'll be talking about it next week with an update. Who knows? But
Yeah.
I want to transition to our last story, and this one. I mean, you guys have covered a lot of this. I've covered a lot of it. But ever since Asbury, and even a little bit before that, going back to Damar Hamlin, this idea of, are we having a revival? Are we not? Is it an outpouring? But we can have that debate all day long. But we're a year out now from Asbury and what happened there on the campus there. And Jenny Allen, she just held another one of these really interesting revival events at the University of Georgia. This happened on Wednesday night. And apparently, I don't know if you guys saw this, but she put out some videos explaining it. There's some video of it happening. They do their service. At the end of it, they do a call for salvation to ask people if they want to accept Jesus. All these hands go up. They end up and this is so crazy. They end up in a public area because the campus didn't want them doing baptisms on the official campus.
Mm.
And here they are. They get 4 pickup trucks and they end up doing baptisms in the back of these 4 pickup trucks outside of a fraternity. And the way she described it is, you've got hundreds of these students getting baptized in the back of these pickup trucks, while the fraternity guys are on their decks watching this unfold in this parking lot right out in front of the fraternity house. And you're thinking about this and you're thinking, what is going on?
Mm.
And Jesse, I'll throw to you first, because it does feel like, and I, people listening to this from a perspective of people covering this, I can only speak for myself. It feels like something is happening spiritually in this country in all these different pockets almost all the time now. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, to say that it's not, um, I think we just be denying the fact what the Holy Spirit's doing. Um, and I think we're also seeing, just be willing to, like Alan has done. I don't think this is the first time that she's done this. Be willing to, just be bold and always give an invitation. And that is what is inviting these people to, that we see this, how many people got baptized that night? A ton, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so yeah,
hundreds. I mean,
I mean, I think we're seeing people, we're seeing the church be bold. We need more of it, and young people, obviously, we're seeing within universities, they are hungering. We have the answer for that hunger, and it's Jesus Christ. Let's just be bold. We're seeing testimony of that, and hopefully that just continues to keep growing. I don't know. Is it an outpouring or a ripple effect of the Asbury thing? I mean, I was able to attend one of those days. It was an amazing time to see just the people in the revival worshiping there. Uh, it could be. I mean, we're living in some crazy times right now. Um, Crazy election
yeah.
year in the nation, right? So, I mean, who knows, just how the Holy Spirit's work. We just need to be open. The church needs to be obedient, profess Christ, be bold, um, yeah, and share the gospel.
I love that. I love that. Mark, you've been doing this for a long time in the faith space. When you see these things, do you feel like this is different from what you've seen in the past? Is it a continuation? Like, what do you think about these patterns?
I'm encouraged.
Mm.
I'm encouraged because I don't recall a time in my experience where there has been so much secular pressure and so much of a demand, if you will, that people, if they have a religious faith, keep it in a box, keep it hidden. You don't have to talk about that stuff. And it's very encouraging to see these kinds of revival fires break out. And I sincerely hope and I pray that we'll see more of it as the time goes by, because as the young woman in that OnlyFans story found out,
Yes.
it's only through faith that we can make it.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, getting to cover these stories too, I can only speak for myself, but it's so encouraging to my faith, seeing especially these young people who we've dismissed. And many times, look, I mean, this generation is a mess in a lot of ways, but we often forget that it's the other generations that we're in, and even previous ones, that have raised them.
Yeah.
So I think there's been so much messiness, but to see people realize that there's been a lie that they've been told, and that culture continues to sell it, and that they can find the truth, and that's why this is happening. To me, that's incredibly encouraging. So
Yes.
appreciate you guys
Yes.
joining me today.
No, thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, well, we will be back next week with another episode of Higher Ground. Head on over to the Washington Times and Higher Ground today, and you can check out the work of these fine gentlemen in the show notes today. We'll have links to their work there, and we'll see you again next week.